As of Boxing Day, many places becoming dry, lengthy clear spells and temperatures lower than they have been of late, getting close to freezing in the countryside, a touch of frost and ice across northern Scotland. So it means a sunnier start for many, a drier start for Boxing Day. Plenty of blue skies. The risk of a few showers, largely around the coast and also quite frequent across northern Scotland, but staying dry for the vast majority. But later on in the day, cloud and rain moves in across the far southwest. Temperatures lower than they have been, a little nearer to average.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, thank you for being a big part of GB News.
We'd like to wish you and your loved ones a Christmas season full of comfort and joy,
as well as a peaceful and prosperous new year.
From our family
to yours.
We are proud to be your channel.
Merry Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Merry Christmas.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to a royal year and a Merry Christmas to you. My name's Cameron Walker, I'm GB News' royal correspondent, and over the next hour we will be delving into the royal calendar for 2023 with a whole host of experts and those who can give you insight into the royal family. With me throughout the show is former butler to King Charles Grant Harold and royal correspondent at The Telegraph, India McTaggart. But before all that, here is your latest news headlines.
Good morning and a Merry Christmas from the GB Newsroom. I'm Sam Francis. The headlines at 11. Pope Francis has condemned what he called the futile logic of war, saying that Christ's message of peace was being drowned out in the very land where he was born. The pontiff used his Christmas Eve Mass last night to speak out against the ongoing conflict in Gaza. He said, "Our hearts are in Bethlehem, where the Prince of Peace has been rejected by the clash of arms." The Palestinian Minister of Tourism said the city is celebrating Christmas with sadness and sorrow after all the festivities there have been cancelled. The Pope's message comes after an airstrike on a refugee camp in central Gaza killed at least 78 people. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to continue the war after Israel endured one of its deadliest nights of the 12-week-old war with Hamas. Meanwhile, Ukraine is celebrating Christmas on the 25th of December for the first time. It's a landmark change to the country's traditions. The Russian Orthodox Church observes Christmas on the 7th of January, but this is the first time Ukraine has moved away from that tradition. It comes as Russia's invasion of Ukraine continues. Kyiv's air defences blocked 28 attacks and 2 missiles overnight. 5 civilians were killed. Christian leaders are using their Christmas addresses to highlight what's happening in the Middle East. The Archbishop of Canterbury is expected to use his Christmas Day sermon to highlight the suffering of children caught up in the Israel-Hamas war. Referring to the birthplace of Jesus, he will tell his congregation that the skies of Bethlehem are full of fear rather than angels and glory. And the King and Queen are marking Christmas Day with their family in Norfolk, along with a church service this morning on their Sandringham estate. The royal couple are expected to be joined by the Prince and Princess of Wales and their children. The King's Christmas message will be broadcast at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and you can join us live here on GB News to watch that. We're on TV, in your car, digital radio and on your smart speaker throughout the rest of the day. For now, though, Merry Christmas and back to Cameron Walker for our GB News special, A Royal Year.
Welcome back to A Royal Year with me, Cameron Walker. Now, I've promised a panel, and we've got a stellar panel for you. We have former butler to King Charles, Grant Harold, and royal correspondent at The Telegraph, India McTaggart. Welcome to you both. Happy Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. So, Grant, first of all, what has been your highlight of 2023 in the royal calendar?
I think the highlight has to be the coronation, but from a personal point of view, when we saw them actually leaving the Abbey after the coronation, I felt really proud and kind of took me back to them when I was with them and thinking, even when I worked for them, you wondered what it would be like that day when you'd see them leave the Abbey, and actually witnessing it and seeing it made me feel really proud and lucky to have had that time being around them.
Did it seem surreal?
It did actually, yes, it really did, because I'm sure that we've all seen that over the years there's been images of him wearing a crown, there's been television programmes, but to actually see him wearing the crown on the Imperial Crown, she says he left the Abbey, it was extraordinary. It was very surreal, very surreal.
I bet. India, what about you?
I mean, similar, obviously, covering the coronation was an immense privilege, once in a generation. But I think my actual real highlight was to interview Prince William in Singapore. Wow. Which was obviously very exciting.
Yeah.
Yes, I did it on behalf of the sort of press pack that had travelled there to cover his trip. But it was an amazing experience. And I also went on tour with him to New York and to Poland as well, so quite a few foreign trips.
Do stay with us. But we've mentioned the coronation, of course, the first time in 70 years, a hugely historical event. Georgia Pearce has the highlights.
On Saturday, 6th of May, King Charles III was crowned in a historic ceremony at Westminster Abbey. First cemented in British tradition in 1066, the event was given a modern twist by the King, as the VIP guest list of world leaders and crowned princes were for the first time joined by community heroes, who make a difference to people's lives. 20 million Britons tuned into their television sets and thousands more lined the streets of the capital as their new king and queen prepared for the ceremony. 8 months since the passing of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, the world witnessed a new monarch follow in her footsteps after 70 years, the longest reign in British history. The royal family, as well as TV royalty, took their seats in the Abbey as they eagerly awaited King Charles and Queen Camilla to arrive in the iconic Diamond Jubilee state coach. Prince Harry also made an appearance to support his father after stepping down as a working royal. He flew alone, leaving wife Meghan Markle and children Archie and Lilibet at home in California. The Duke of Sussex donned no special robes or uniform, but wore his military medals with pride. The Archbishop of Canterbury led the religious service as His Majesty was presented to the people, and swore an oath to govern the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. He was then handed the sovereign sceptre with cross, the rod of equity and mercy, and finally, the most important of all, St. Edward's crown. The Prince of Wales, heir to the throne, pledged his allegiance to the king with a kiss on his father's cheek. King Charles's consort, who has been faithfully by his side for decades, was crowned and anointed as Britain's new queen. Leaving the Abbey after the ceremony, King Charles and Queen Camilla wore robes of estates as the coronation procession saw the largest number of military personnel since Winston Churchill's funeral. As the crowds cheered for their reigning monarch, the Third Carolean era had well and truly begun. Georgia Pierce, GB News.
Joining me now is GB News presenter Nigel Farage, who was sat with me for 3-4 hours on Coronation Day itself.
No, 6 hours.
6 hours.
It was a 6-hour broadcast.
Wow.
I had 10 minutes out.
Yes.
10 minutes out at 1 o'clock.
Yes.
I left you with David Starkey.
Yes.
No, David and I did 6 hours with you chopping in and chopping out. From a broadcasting perspective, it was a huge challenge. I'm really nervous doing anything.
Yeah.
And thank goodness I had David with me, whose historical knowledge of everything since Edward II is almost unparalleled. It was a huge honour to do. Obviously, Alistair Stewart would have done it. He was the grand old man of GB News.
Yeah.
He'd had a bad medical diagnosis. I was asked at the last minute to come and do it. Honoured to do so. An extraordinary day, a beautiful day, a day that, I'm 60 nearly. I'd never seen a coronation.
Well, it's a historical day, a historical moment for the country.
It's a big historical day. A small anti-monarchy demonstration, but really very, very small. Huge crowds, great love. A very different feeling. I think the weather didn't help very much.
No. And you mentioned anti-monarchy protests. Of course, a few of them were arrested, one of which is now taking legal action against Metropolitan Police.
Wow.
I mean, do you think police were heavy-handed, or do you think it was necessary to keep it all in check?
There was a small anti-monarchy protest. The police clamped down on it. They'd no idea whether it would spread more widely. To me, not a huge issue. It was the culmination, really, of 6 months, extraordinary months. The death of the Queen was the most extraordinary thing. The Queen's funeral was the most extraordinary global event.
Yeah.
And I was there on the pitch, the GB News pitch, by Canada Gate, watching this incredible military procession. Something that London had not seen since the death of Churchill in '65. The coronation, different, still very significant. Somehow, to be honest, not quite the same historical import. And I'm not being unfair to Charles or Camilla, who, to be fair, have done their best in their first year. Not a bad first year, I would say.
What do you think was your single standout moments of the whole day?
I think the big standout was the balcony appearance. How can it not be? There is something over the last 100 years of absolute magic about our royal family appearing on that balcony at moments of great national celebration, significance, marriages, jubilees, coronations, VE Day, whatever it may be. And I thought Charles and Camilla, there they were on the balcony, and we had a direct view, an unencumbered direct view from where we were.
I remember.
Wearing their crowns, looking very happy. And I couldn't quite get into my mind. Here was a very ancient, historic picture taking place in 21st century Britain, and somehow it seemed to work.
The coronation certainly gave something to celebrate, didn't it?
It gave something very unique and very magnificent. And, there are monarchies in the Netherlands and Denmark, but they're all, bicycling monarchies. The grandeur's gone out of all of them. And we've somehow kept some of that. And the hard left hate it, but most of us love it.
Nigel, thank you so much for joining me. See you soon. Merry Christmas.
And to you.
Now, earlier this month, The Telegraph released its list of 2023's hardest working royals. Now, guess who came out on top? Yep, that's right. Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, as she has done for a number of years now. 457 engagements in 2023, followed closely by His Majesty the King, 425. In third place was the Duke of Edinburgh, 297, followed by the Queen, 233. Now, close to the middle, or slightly further towards the bottom, the Prince and Princess of Wales, 172 for the Prince of Wales and 123 for the Princess of Wales. We're rejoined by my panel now, former butler to King Charles, Grant Harold, and royal correspondent at The Telegraph, India McTaggart. India, there's been a lot of criticism of the Prince and Princess of Wales for being quite far down the list, bearing in mind they are the next King and Queen.
Yes, you're right, there has been. But what I will say, and this is something he made very clear to me in Singapore when we spoke, is that their approach is going to be completely different. As Princess and Prince of Wales, they are going to focus much more on legacy impact projects. These are long-term passion projects. These are things where they really want to actually make a difference. He actually said to me, you know, my family have done a brilliant job highlighting all these different causes over the years. You know, they have many patronages, and it's a brilliant sort of ability of the royal family to go across Britain and indeed around the world and highlight some of the most wonderful charities.
Yes, hardest working doesn't necessarily mean number of engagements, although I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that Princess Anne is not a hard-working royal. Like, she absolutely is. Let me just make that clear. Grant, the King and Queen very much up there, and the Duke of Edinburgh taking on a lot of duties that perhaps the late Queen would have done.
They are, and even as you know, during the end of the late Queen's life, in recent years, she was passing things on at that point, as same with her late husband, Prince Philip. And so they've obviously taken these on, embraced it. It's interesting. I mean, these figures are obviously quite important. The average person will look at those and decide who they think, you know, reading that, who's, dare I say, the one that's not working as hard. And as Indy mentioned, it's not quite as simple as that. You know, these are just a kind of overall number. It doesn't mean what's going on also in private. There's a lot of things they do that possibly we don't even hear about as well. So they carry out a lot of engagements. But Princess Anne is quite impressive because I believe she's 73 and, you know, almost double Prince of Wales's age. And yet, obviously, I think together, you know, when you combine those kind of numbers, she's doing a lot of engagements. But she's amazing. I mean, she's quite an amazing character and still has time. We often see her locally still doing her shopping, so she's got time to do all this and still carry on with her own private life as well.
Yes, she has a lot of admiration, I think, around the country. For the moment, both, thank you very, very much. But next, we're going to be discussing perhaps the rise of protests, anti-monarchy protests. Remember those big yellow signs? We'll be debating, is the monarchy losing its popularity? Stay with us.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Welcome back to A Royal Year with me, Cameron Walker. Now, the royal family have had some pretty large-scale royal events in the last year, and some believe that it's a bit outdated, particularly in a cost of living crisis. Now, Republican protests appear to have stepped up a gear since the late Queen's death, but polls in general show that the public continue to support the monarchy. Here's Madeleine Collier with the details.
Chants of joy disrupted by chants of hatred. This year saw plenty of patriotism and adoration for the royals, but within the fanfare, there were those prepared to go the extra mile to share their ambitions for a Britain without a monarchy. A recent poll from Savanta UK suggests support for the monarchy has dipped to just over a half. And whilst tens of thousands gathered in support of May's coronation, anti-monarchy demonstrators took their opportunity to voice their distaste.
Britain's head of state should be elected by the people and based on merit, not inherited and not without the consent of the public.
The Metropolitan Police were criticised for arresting 64 people that day, including the boss of Republic, Graham Smith. The anti-monarchist is now taking legal action.
Well, they said that it was suspicion of being in possession of equipment to lock on, but we weren't in possession of any such equipment, and we deny everything that they've said.
Members of Republic were also thrown out of Buckingham Palace after successfully staging the first ever anti-monarchy protest inside the building. Bright yellow signs were a visible presence at 2023 royal engagements across the country, but engagements were outnumbered by Union flags and royal well-wishers. Although King Charles stoically continues his duties, his efforts might not be enough to make him everyone's king. Madeleine Collier, GB News.
So is the British monarchy outdated? Joining me now to debate this topic is royal historian and broadcaster Rafe Hadel-Mancu and the chief executive of Republic, Graham Smith. Graham, first of all, you were mentioned in that VT there. You were arrested on Coronation Day by a Metropolitan Police officer and you are now bringing legal action. Where are you up to with that?
Well, we've applied for a judicial review, so that's where we're up to. We don't have an answer on that, and we're waiting, hopefully, fairly early in the new year, we'll get an answer on that. And the expectation is that we'll be successful because I think the case is pretty strong, but we'll have to wait and see what the court says.
Why do you feel that the British monarchy should not exist anymore?
Well, I mean, it is an institution that falls well short of the standards that we expect of public institutions. There's been a lot of talk about the sort of standards we expect of politicians in recent years. The monarchy is highly secretive. It's not going too far to say it's corrupt in the sense of abuse of public office for personal gain, which is not an accusation of criminality, although there have been cases such as cash for honours accusations which still raise questions about the conduct of royals. But profoundly, the Crown is a central part of our Constitution, and our Constitution is really not very good. It centralises a lot of power in the hands of the Prime Minister, it leaves us without proper checks and balances, and it leaves us with a head of state not willing to act independently of government.
Rafe, it appears that the monarchy has a few long-term challenges.
It does, but we mustn't overestimate this. I mean, let's be clear here. Republicanism is the biggest political failure in modern British history. Even at the monarchy's darkest moments, Republicans have never been able to convince more than a quarter of the nation that it's in their interest to abolish the stability of monarchy for an uncertain republic. You know, and the gold standard for all pollsters will tell you, the gold standard is the Ipsos Mori annual poll that's been conducted every year for 30 years, since 1993. The question they asked, should Britain become a republic or remain a monarchy? In 1993, it was 69%. In October of this year, it was 66%. Ipsos Mori have said that is the single most consistent answer they've had to any question in over half a century of polling, and it matches a similar poll taken back in 1969, because the British public are clear. The old adage still applies: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Mature nations that are successful don't tamper with their constitutions unless it's really necessary.
Well, it is necessary, and it's very obviously necessary. I mean, we've had constitutional crisis that we've just about avoided under Boris Johnson. Had he chosen not to resign, there would have been almost no way of getting rid of him, because the only person who can sack him is the monarch, and the monarch was not anywhere to be seen. Our constitution is absolutely in dire straits in terms of being lacking accountability and checks and balances. In terms of polling, there's been a significant shift. I mean, the Ipsos Mori poll is one poll which asks a very particular question, but lots of other pollsters are showing very significant drops in support for the monarchy, from sort of 80 plus down to 50 plus. I mean, 52% in a more recent Savanta poll. So there is clearly, and a lot of, and this isn't just a Republican view, there are a lot of academics and pollsters are saying there is a significant drop in support for the monarchy, and we're now over a third of people saying they want to get rid of it.
Graham, if we get rid of monarchy, let's say tomorrow, what is the alternative?
Well, the alternative is very simple. I mean, most of our neighbours do this. It's a parliamentary republic, you know, and the idea that a republic is somehow an unknown quantity is nonsense, because Ireland does it very successfully, Iceland does it very successfully, Germany, Finland, the Baltic states. You know, these are very stable, prosperous, democratic countries which rank far higher than Britain does in all of the international indices on things like democracy and equality and fairness.
Well, if I can just come back to that point.
Yeah.
So it's important to remember there are very few constitutional monarchies in the world, less than 20%, and yet they make up the majority of the top 20 nations in the world, according to the UN's Human Development Index, which marks the quality of life. Britain, Belgium, the Netherlands, Japan, Sweden, Denmark, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. No one would say that those are backward nations, that they're antiquated, that they're being held back by being monarchies. In fact, those are the world's most socially progressive countries. So they're not a hindrance. And rather than giving up an institution that is recognised around the world, that symbolises our thousand-year history and our constitution so brilliantly, you know, we are the world's second soft power nation. A large part of that is because of our monarchy. To abandon that for a grey-suited former politician or whoever would become a president seems to me to be for the birds, because quite frankly, the world doesn't pay attention when the president of Germany has a grandchild.
That is, I mean, none of that is true. I mean, the fact is that it's not a majority in the top 20, and we're not in the top 20 of political stability.
It's 12 of 20.
And there are just as many republics in the top 10 of all of these indices than there are monarchies. And the reason why some of these monarchies are there, the monarchies have survived because they're stable. They're not stable because they've got a monarchy. That doesn't work. And monarchies historically have been catastrophic for countries like Italy, Spain, Greece, Cambodia, Thailand. You know, they are not a good institution. And the idea that we are going to hang on to this thing where we are worried about whether or not our head of state's grandchild is famous around the world is nonsense.
Sorry, Rafe, final word to you. Young people, in particular in polling, appear to be less favourable towards the monarchy. What does the monarchy need to do to improve that, if anything, if they can do that?
Yeah, so there are one real long-term challenge are two things. Firstly, immigration, because 10 million people in this country were born abroad and they don't have the same cultural or emotional connection to the monarchy, and they don't really have any grounding in the history or the constitution. And also, similarly, we have an issue with young people today. Since 2016, that's what's remarkable. They have just become the most radicalised left-wing demographic. We're have ever seen, completely out of kilter with those even 5 years older than them. So, and it's not just on the monarchy, it's on support for free speech or love of nation, on a whole raft of issues. So the monarchy needs to really address that, but it's doing such good work, and the King's work and the Prince of Wales's work really do address many of the issues that are close to the King's.
Very briefly come back on that.
I mean, it's not just young people. Polls over the last 12 months that show that everybody under the age of 40, a majority or less than a majority support the monarchy.
That's
so
not true.
Support across the board is falling, and
it's 60% for every group apart from the young.
Serious long-term trouble, and it's now a matter of when, not if. It will lose its majority support across the country, and it will be abolished.
All right, you need to agree to disagree on that one. We're not going to change the constitution today, but moving on now. Prince William launched his Homeward project this year. It's his attempt to try and demonstrate that homelessness can be ended within 5 years, making it rare, brief and unrepeated. I'm joined now by former royal butler to King Charles III, Grant Harold, and royal correspondent at The Telegraph, India McTaggart. Grant, just come to you first. Prince William, this has been a long time coming, perhaps. His mother, Diana, really got him into helping those who are homeless and vulnerable.
Absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of what he does and a lot of his duties and what he's involved in is thanks to her, because obviously he spent a lot of time around his mother, got involved in some of the projects she was involved in, and even though he was a very young age, he's obviously taken that to heart, and it's almost kind of honour her legacy by getting involved in these projects.
Yeah, and India, this is something Prince William talked to you about in Singapore, didn't he? That it's one of those legacy projects he wants to have tangible impacts on.
Absolutely. This is a huge one for him. This is what he described as his life's work, what he wants to be his life's work. It's a 5-year project. It's across 6 locations in the UK with the aim of eradicating homelessness. He's sort of using his convening power, which is obviously unique to the royal family, to bring all these charities and local authorities, etc., together. And he said, I really want to actually focus on the wraparound services around homelessness. I want to build the homes. I want to focus on the mental health work. I want to focus on education and skills. So he actually is really, really passionate about this one. And as Grant says, this is because, you know, he was first taken to the passage by Diana when he was 11 years old. So this is very much a continuation of his mother's legacy as well as his own now.
And Grant, do you think King Charles will be proud of his son?
Totally. I mean, I'm sure we all remember King Charles, when, as Prince of Wales, got involved in so many projects. And at the time, people would say that, you know, well, these things you should be involved in. Is this a good idea? There was a lot of jokes, a lot of humour about it. And now people kind of look and think, well, what a, you know, he was somebody that almost kind of visualised the future. And his son's very much kind of copying that. And I have no doubt he'll be extremely proud of him. And again, I'm sure Prince William will one day want his children to take on his legacy of what he's doing. So it's very different, isn't it, as Indy mentioned, that the royal family, if they get involved or behind something, everybody gets behind it. And that's something I think they're aware of that power. And that's an amazing thing that they use that for the good, to help other people, which is fantastic.
Indeed, and perhaps it's going to be more than shining a spotlight in the long term. We'll have to wait and see. But another couple of royals who continue to make headlines is the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. For the good, for the bad. Their polling is not perhaps brilliant in the United Kingdom, but what about the United States? We'll be discussing them both shortly.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to a royal year. Now, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex continue to make headlines despite no longer being working members of the royal family. Now, Prince Harry's explosive memoir Spare was published in January. Didn't make him particularly popular in the polls, but he has had a victory of sorts in his case against Mirror Group. Georgia Pearce reports.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have continued to dominate the British headlines in the last year, since stepping down as working royals in 2020. In December 2022, Harry and Meghan released the first of many Netflix projects, with a fly-on-the-wall documentary about their new life in California. In the 6-episode series, the couple spoke about their time as working members of the monarchy, including their scathing opinions of other royals. Despite mixed reviews, the series was a streaming success, breaking multiple Netflix records. The Sussexes also produced other projects for Netflix and Spotify, including Heart of Invictus, a film by Prince Harry focusing on his Invictus Games. In January this year, Harry continued to rock the royal rift as he released his 416-page tell-all memoir, Spare. In his own words, the Duke of Sussex recalled what it was like growing up in the royal family, describing it as living in his brother Prince William's shadow, and accused the Prince of Wales of a physical attack.
He grabbed me by the collar, ripping my necklace, and he knocked me to the floor. I landed on the dog's bowl, which cracked under my back, the pieces cutting into me.
Among many revelations, including his past drug use and work in the military, Prince Harry branded Queen Camilla dangerous for forging connections with the British press in order to improve her image. Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace have not commented on the allegations. The book became a bestseller, selling over 1.4 million copies, the fastest-selling non-fiction book of all time. In May this year, the Sussexes revealed they were involved in a near-catastrophic car chase after attending an award ceremony in New York. A spokesman for the royal couple branded the ordeal a relentless pursuit by highly aggressive paparazzi, but some eyewitnesses disagree. The Duchess of Sussex had delivered an acceptance speech at the ceremony after collecting an award for her Spotify podcast, Archetypes. Prince Harry is still dragging several newspaper publishers through the courts over alleged unlawful information gathering, as well as the government over his security in the UK. This month, Harry said it was a great day for truth when a judge ruled he was a victim of unlawful information gathering by Mirror Group newspapers, awarding him more than £140,000 in damages. To end a turbulent year for the Sussexes, Omid Scobie released his second royal biography, Endgame, in which senior members of the royal family were rocked once again by a fresh set of allegations and claims. Meghan and Harry are yet to disclose any involvement in the book, which has received widespread backlash after appearing to name two senior royals in connection with an allegation first brought to light by the Sussexes in their interview with Oprah Winfrey, where there were alleged conversations and concerns about their son Archie. The next year is set to see more projects in the pipeline for the couple, but will it deliver them stateside success? And will the royal rift with the Sussexes continue? Georgia Pierce, GB News.
Prince Harry had a victory of sorts this month, winning more than £100,000 worth of damages from Mirror Group newspapers, who a judge has ruled did make him a victim of unlawful information gathering. India and Grant, will Prince Harry see this as a bit of a victory?
He will. I think, as you know, Cameron said all the way along, that it's not great, all these legal battles and court cases that keep coming up. And I think historically the Queen was only ever involved in 2 legal cases in her whole reign or her lifetime. And it seems to be a kind of regular occurrence at the moment with Prince Harry and the Duchess of Sussex, and it's not ideal. And I'm sure there's going to be other cases possibly, and they might not always win, but it isn't. I still find it really unfortunate. I don't see anyone being a winner in these kind of situations because I think it's embarrassing for them and for the royal family.
And Prince Harry had some pretty strong words, India, outside of court via his lawyer, David Sherborne, calling on the Metropolitan Police to investigate potential criminal charges.
Yes, and on the stock market to reflect what we have seen and sort of tank certain stocks, so to speak. But I think for him, he did view it as a victory. You know, he said, I feel vindicated, I feel happy with this result. He actually, said that he, to slay dragons, he knew he was going to get a bit burned, but this was well worth it. So I think, from his point of view, to have found that 15 out of 33 articles were the product of unlawful information gathering by Mirror Group newspapers was a big deal.
OK, India Grant, thank you very much for now.
Thank you.
Joining me now is the Daily Express Royal Roundup host, Pandora Forsyth, to talk the rest of the Harry and Meghan drama of 2023. Pandora, welcome.
Thank you.
Spare, his memoir.
Yeah.
A lot of juicy detail in there.
A lot of juicy detail. A massive success for him, the fastest non-fiction book of all time in the UK. Brilliant. But of course, dealing with the consequences off the back of that, quite a year for him in terms of family relations.
Yeah, absolutely, because of course he accuses his own brother in the memoir of physically attacking him, something that Kensington Palace is not talking about.
No, and that does seem to be a theme throughout all the royal revelations this year. They're keeping very quiet on every single front and not feeding into the drama that Harry and Meghan are bringing to the royal family. And I thought this year perhaps it would have been more of a quiet one, but apparently not. This is what's to come in 2024. We don't quite know yet. But what more stories are there really to tell?
So something which didn't go particularly well for the Duke and Duchess, perhaps from a PR perspective, is what their spokesperson described as a near catastrophic car chase. But it didn't turn out to be that, according to NYPD officials, New York Police Department officials, did it?
No, and there does seem to be lots of speculation about various claims which are made in the book. And bear in mind, as you said, we haven't heard from the royal family on this either. So we are very much hearing one side of the story. I can imagine, though, for Harry, anything related to car chases would be extremely traumatic for him. If we put ourselves in his shoes, if we can, I can totally appreciate that. But as you said, when people come back and say, hold on a second, this isn't all quite making sense, then, how does that look from Harry's perspective when he keeps on telling these stories and perhaps aren't all quite adding up?
No, and I suppose you look at the US, perhaps social media, and just the ridicule they had from Family Guy and South Park, those two sitcoms, which have taken the mick out of them a little bit, haven't they? So it's not looking great for 2024. What
and
are their
also
prospects?
In terms of their brand, are they trying to be a very serious brand, working with charities, really trying to sort of take the royals front in terms of getting exposure on these really important issues, but then having yourself thrown into sitcoms in the US? Because, of course, they can do that now because they're not working senior members of the royal family, and they do need to become financially independent. And with that will come opinion, and unfortunately it won't always be positive.
Pandora, for the moment, thank you so much for joining us here on GB News. Speak again soon. Now, in January, the Princess of Wales launched a project incredibly close to her heart. Her Shaping Us campaign aims to raise awareness of the importance of early childhood development, and she has an advisory panel with her Royal Foundation, and I'm pleased to say that a member of that panel is here with me now, Ed Van Keur, who is the co-founder of Reach Academy in Feltham and on that advisory panel. Ed, welcome to GB News.
Thank you so much.
First of all, just explain to me about the importance of early childhood development and why you think the Princess has such a passion for it.
Yeah, what we've learned over the last 20 years is much more about the impact of those earliest years and the way the brain develops and how important those initial relationships that children have. So when we talk about having healthy adults, when we talk about having healthy young people, what's critical to that is having a really positive start in the first few years of life. And I think the Princess of Wales has realised through the work that she's done around homelessness, around drugs, around mental health, quite how important this period of life is. And so it's become a real passion for her.
And you've been in several meetings with the Princess of Wales. What strikes you about her? Is she genuinely interested in wanting to make a difference?
Yeah, completely. Obviously, she's got her own personal experience of bringing up her own children. But over the last 5 years, she's really immersed herself in understanding the research and the detail about what matters and how this works scientifically. But also she's built really strong relationships with practitioners and parents all over the country, and she's been able to see at firsthand the impact of that kind of nurturing support that you can provide in communities that make a real difference.
And what exactly is needed? Because of course the princess can't be too political, can she? So what exactly can she do, and what impact is going to happen?
I think one of the opportunities with this is people don't always realise how important this period of life is. I think we're very focused on thinking about teaching our children to read, making sure they're numerate, but actually we don't always know as a society what's important in this period. And so the awareness raising that the Shaping Us campaign has done specifically, and then the work of the Princess more generally, I think is really important to create an understanding in society of the importance of this period of life, which I think over time could well shift the way resources are allocated and the way government is thinking about this as well.
And Ed, just briefly, what do you think, there's lots of talk, of course, but actual action is perhaps needed? What action is needed in the long term?
I think that there's a lot of evidence that investment in the earliest years has much greater impact than investment later on. So we're much better off spending a pound on supporting babies and parents than we are necessarily on building more prisons, for example. And so overall, I would be encouraging investment to happen earlier. In education, we invest more in secondary than we do in primary, more in primary than we do in early years. And ideally, we would switch that around. And I think what the opportunity is here is to build public understanding of that, to build public understanding of the importance, so that over time, this isn't a political issue. This is one of those things that's important and not always urgent. And so the more that people are aware of the importance of this, the more that we can create positive change in communities, we can also then start to influence the way government is allocating resources as well.
OK, Ed Vanker, thank you very much, and a Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you.
Coming up, Prince William has taken America by storm, but does he really have the makings of a global statesman? Find out shortly.
Hello, thank you for being a big part of GB News.
We'd like to wish you and your loved ones a Christmas season full of comfort and joy,
as well as a peaceful and prosperous new year.
From our family
to yours.
We are proud to be your channel.
Merry Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Here on GB News.
the People's Channel.
Merry Christmas.
Welcome back to a royal year. Now, post-pandemic, the King and Queen have embarked on several successful state visits, including Kenya, Germany and France. And while in France, the King became the first British monarch in history to address the French Senate. And I'm delighted to say Eric Bouquet, a French senator, joins me now. Eric, welcome to GB News. How significant was it that the King addressed the French Senate from the chamber?
Well, it was a great honor for the French Senate. King Charles III chose the Senate to talk to the members of Parliament of the National Assembly and the senators, and he chose the Senate, which was a great occasion, of course, for all parliamentarians of France to hear that speech.
And how important is that relationship between France and Britain and strengthening it, and how does the King contribute to that?
Well, indeed, it was an important moment. 7 years after the Brexit that the British people chose, which I respect, of course. It was essential for the monarch to show that the relationship between France and Great Britain is still fundamental in the European continent. Britain is not part of the EU again today, but they're still a neighbor. They're still an important nation, and it's essential for France and the United Kingdom to cooperate on central issues
And I believe you had the chance to meet His Majesty after his speech in the Senate. What was that like? What did he say to you?
Well, it was a great opportunity for me. As you may know, I used to be an English teacher. I taught English for 30 years. So I had the chance to shake hands with the monarch, exchange a few words, telling him that I tried in my whole career to teach the Queen's English, which made him smile a little.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Eric Bouquet, French senator. Thanks for speaking to me.
OK, bye-bye.
Now, Prince William's popularity appears to be going from strength to strength, but not just here in Britain, no. He appears to be becoming very popular around the world, particularly in America, with some dubbing him as a global statesman. So will he help out the British government in their quest for soft diplomacy? Madeleine Collier has more.
The last year has been one of great change and even greater challenge.
2023 saw the future king's evolution on the international stage, with a calendar full of diplomatic engagements embracing global challenges like climate change and the war in Ukraine. Many royal watchers have suggested Prince William is carving out his own identity as a future modern monarch. He proved a hit in New York for his Earthshot Prize Summit.
I think that Americans like to have that sense of we could be better, we could be doing more, and he kind of embodies that, so.
He was also dubbed the most popular public figure in America, according to a Gallup poll, beating both President Biden and Trump.
So the prince has clearly won over Americans of all stripes, and these days that is, we all know, no small feat.
Prince William took the Earthshot Prize Award ceremony to Singapore in search of solutions to repair our planet. £1 million prizes were given out to 5 winners from around the world. He stated,
Hope does remain. The light of optimism is burning bright in our Earthshot finalists.
And memorably declared the next 10 years the most consequential decade in history. The Prince of Wales also used his influence to emphasise Britain's support for Ukraine. Unannounced, the Prince paid a visit to Poland to speak to British and Polish troops stationed just outside the Ukrainian border. William also visited a shelter and spoke to a number of refugees, using his platform to highlight their plight. His visit to an LGBTQ+ restaurant in Poland's capital, Warsaw, quietly contributed to his strategy of statesmanship too. Human rights groups have called out what they see as Polish authorities' hateful rhetoric against the community. Despite heavy criticism for carrying out far less engagements than a number of working royals in 2023, William chose to focus on fewer causes to create real impact for the future. It's understood Prince William and his wife, Catherine, are also paying more overseas visits on behalf of the British government in the new year. With feet firmly planted on the world stage, his influence as future king could do wonders for brand Britain. Madeleine Collier, GB News.
Joining me now is American journalist and royal expert Kinsey Schofield. Welcome and a Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you so much, Cameron. Nothing I love more than the royals at Christmas time. So great to talk to you.
Absolutely. Kinsey, let's talk Prince William and his absolute storm that he created in New York City, surrounded by royal fans on his trip.
Absolutely right. I mean, how fun is it to see, for me, the royal family in the States, and with Prince William specifically, just an enormous line of people lined up to see him outside of that firehouse, cheering, screaming, everyone having their own personal stories about why they love him or relate to him and his family. He's a rock star here in the United States. And, there was the joke about him in those, what was it? The waiters, like he had on when he was in the water, and all of the internet like collectively losing their mind about how handsome he looked in that situation.
So is this Prince William being a global statesman then? A recent Gallup poll, as we heard in that VT there, suggests that he is the public figure most likely to unite America. That's a huge, bit of information for him.
Isn't that so bizarre that we look to Prince William? I mean, one of the most likable characters, especially with how polarizing our politics have become. I think it's because he's a calming figure. He's a mature figure. We've seen him handle kind of chaos under pressure, and we like the reaction. There's been a lot of negative attention on him and his family over the last several years, and to watch the way that he handles it, and it is that never complain, never explain. There's a maturity in that. There's a calmness in that, and bizarrely, there's a kindness in that. And I think that Americans really admire that about him.
Kinsey, we look forward to seeing what he gets up to in 2024. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Well, as you've heard, it's been a pretty busy 2023 for the royal family, but what on earth does 2024 have in store? I'm rejoined by my panel, a former butler to King Charles III, Grant Harold, and royal correspondent at The Telegraph, India McTaggart. Grant, first of all, what on earth is going to happen in 2024?
I have no idea, but the way I see it is this year has been a bit of a, I suppose, a kind of honeymoon period for the new King and Queen. But as you know, Cameron, it'll be business as usual. Carry on next year. We'll have the same, we'll have more overseas trips, state visits, obviously official duties, behind the scenes events going on. So it'll just be business as usual. The only surprise is if there's suddenly any royal pregnancies or anything like that, which I doubt, but you never know.
Oh, watch this space. India, Grant mentioned a honeymoon period being over there for the King and Queen. Do you think the real test is yet to come?
I think in many ways, maybe, because obviously we had the build-up to the coronation, we had the monumental event, and next year there's not something to sort of all go around like that. So I think we're going to see them go to the Commonwealth. Obviously, there are sort of fraying ties there, probably Australia or New Zealand, Canada as well. So I think he's definitely going to focus on being more overseas and sort of flexing his soft diplomacy muscles, as it were.
There was certainly a lot to keep an eye on. Grant, India, thanks so much for joining me throughout this entire show. Really appreciate your time. Of course, there is so much to get through in 2024. You can keep right up to date here on GB News. I'm Cameron Walker, GB News' royal correspondent. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your Christmas Day forecast for GB News. It is unsettled, most of us seeing a grey and damp Christmas, but there is some snow across the Scottish Hills, officially making it a white Christmas. Thanks to this area of low pressure which is pulling away, the good news is for the vast majority on Boxing Day, it will be drier and brighter, but through the rest of the Christmas day, it's cloudy. There's outbreaks of rain pushing north and east across the country. This falling as snow over the higher ground of Scotland above around 200 to 300 metres, perhaps as much as 5 to 10 centimetres of snow. But for the vast majority of us, it will be very mild once more. 12-13 degrees across southern counties of England and Wales. Temperatures making it into double figures further north too. Colder for Scotland, particularly over the higher ground. And this rain slowly pushes and snow slowly pushes into the North Sea as we head into the early hours. The rain also clearing the south, allowing skies generally to become clearer and a chillier night to come compared to late, but still temperatures above average in the south, down to freezing. Some icy stretches possible to take us into Boxing Day for parts of Scotland, but plenty of blue skies, a few showers around, blustery showers across the far north of Scotland, but plenty of sunshine as we go through the day. However, thicker cloud will approach from the southwest, bringing outbreaks of rain for Devon and Cornwall as we move through into the afternoon, but for many, a better day to come and chillier too. See you again soon.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, thank you for being a big part of GB News.
We'd like to wish you and your loved ones a Christmas season full of comfort and joy,
as well as a peaceful and prosperous new year.
From our family
to yours.
We are proud to be your channel.
Merry Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Merry Christmas.
Christmas, everyone. It's that magical time of the year again when so many of us are looking forward to all the joy and togetherness of tomorrow. But just before then, I want to take a moment to thank all those who will be sacrificing their Christmases this year in the service of others. The people working in our NHS, in our police forces, and in our amazing armed forces. To remember those facing a difficult time here and in many places around the world. And to reflect on the Christian values at the heart of this celebration of Christ's birth. Because Christmas is a time of peace, joy, compassion, a time of hope and a promise of a better world. And today, as we look ahead, let's keep that promise of a brighter future burning into the new year. Wherever you are, and whatever you are doing for the festivities, I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
As communities across Britain gather together for a period of faith and festivities, I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Throughout the Christmas period, we see the bonds of kinship rekindled as families and friends share in the joy, the hope, and the optimism that Christmas provides. For Christians the world over, this is a time to rejoice in the birth of Jesus Christ, God's Son. The birth of Jesus Christ brings light into our world and reminds us that in times of darkness and despair, hope, love, and peace are always worth advocating for. Charity, humility, and selflessness take centre stage in the Christmas story, and this season serves as a reminder that these qualities should be a guiding light for all of us. During the holidays, many of you will be serving your community and our country, and I want to thank our ever-dedicated NHS staff working around the clock to keep us healthy.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give